As much as I was tempted to poison the well before showing the following video, I resisted the urge and will only display the title and the username of its creator prior to playing his video in its entirety.
Hey YouTube, I wanted to bring you something kind of funny. We've got a news article here that says NASA's Cassini orbiter snaps unbelievable picture of Saturn. Well folks, unbelievable is right, and I'll show you that in just a second, but it says science fiction movies have spoiled us on high-definition views of our planetary neighbors, but real-life photographs with equal jaw-dropping potential are exceedingly rare. That's what makes NASA's awe-inspiring snapshot of Saturn, high-res version here, which we're going to show you here in just a second, such a stunning piece of eye candy. Now as you can see, basically when I click on this high-res version, that I am on the nasa.gov site, okay, and this is supposed to be a Cassini snapshot, right? So what I've done is on another copy of it, I basically put it into here. Now I don't think this looks real at all. What do you think? Look at this disc and look at the rings. It looks like it's been completely photoshopped, and actually it looks really bad the way that it was done. It's even got this, I don't know what this is. It's like this silver ring, and look, and it's like this silver ring around a disc, and then it's got this lens flare on the ring. This doesn't look real at all. I mean, I don't even know who did. Look at this, the way that the ring breaks up right here, the way it breaks up right here, and this whole disc looks like it's floating in front of all the rings, and then they just decided to go in there and add rings inside the disc, and then they painted them. See, look, they painted these rings right here, and you can see them going through the white area, right? You see how these rings are going through the white area? And then all of a sudden here, they stop. Look at this. And see this? These rings right here don't continue. This is a complete photoshopped a complete photoshopped picture, folks. This is not a real picture of Saturn, and it's on the NASA site. So, once again, we catch NASA in horrible lies. So for all you folks out there that when they capture pictures of Elenin, just remember, okay? This is what you get for Saturn, okay? Obviously, times are rough because they could only hire the person minimum wage. They couldn't hire a real artist because this actually sucks. Anyways, I thought I would bring this to your attention. I will post the link to the original high-res picture on NASA's site. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
Hello, Danny. Nice to make your acquaintance. I've never met a real guru before. So, let's start off with something positive. You did make one statement that I won't quibble with.
I don't know what this is.
And that indisputable statement establishes the premise of your whole video. You don't know what any of it is. The reasonable thing would be to ask questions. Instead, in your conceit, you presume anything you don't understand must be fake. It escaped the attention of thousands of real astronomers all over the world, but you, gifted as you apparently think you are, were not fooled.
You see how these rings are going through the white area? And then all of a sudden here, they stop. Look at this. And see this? These rings right here don't continue. This is a complete photoshopped a complete photoshopped picture, folks. This is not a real picture of Saturn.
I will now ask the questions you should have asked. I'll begin with a principle that should be of some value. When we see things in aggregate, we may perceive them as being more solid than they are, depending on how far away we are from them. Clouds at a distance look fluffy and palpable, but if you've ever stood in a fog, that's a cloud. It's a fine mist. Here are some clouds that look fairly dense, but in fact their average density is lower than the best vacuum we can make on Earth. Pictures of galaxies also look fairly compact, yet if two galaxies, each with 200 or 300 billion stars, collide, there will be a lot of gravitational disruption, but it is highly unlikely that any of the stars will physically collide. That gives us a sense of just how misleading photographs of aggregates can be. They can't come close to revealing the vast distances between stars compared to their sizes. Galaxies, like atoms and like the rings of Saturn, are mostly empty space. For a long time after Galileo first discovered the rings of Saturn, they were believed to be solid. As our technology improved, we could see that they were aggregates of particles. When the sun is shining on them, they look opaque due to the saturation of light on the film. Flyby missions showed that they aren't nearly as dense as they appeared. This photograph, taken from the night side of Saturn, where the sun isn't shining on this portion of the rings, is allowing us to see them more as they really are, mostly transparent.
It's like this silver ring around a disc, and then it's got this lens flare on the ring. This doesn't look real at all.
It's the same thing as in this picture of Jupiter taken by the Galileo probe 15 years ago. When the sun is on the far side of a gas giant planet, the upper atmosphere is lit up by it. Wait, you didn't know that the sun was behind Saturn in this picture, did you? Maybe you should have read all the way to the third sentence of this article before you started snickering your way through your grossly ill-informed criticism of this picture. With that, we now have the answer to your next objection about what you call lens flare. That is the sun, just peeking over the limb of the planet. By the way, young guru, why would there be lens flare in a photoshopped picture? If you had any experience observing the rings of Saturn, you would realize that they can change appearance drastically depending on how they are lit. Different filters and processing techniques are used to enhance or reduce certain characteristics. I'll bet you've never seen pictures like these. Would you go to a doctor and say, "Hey, I know this is what a brain looks like, not this. That's so fake." I've already explained how rings can change appearance drastically depending on how they're lit. This portion is lit by the sun from the far side. This is in the shadow of the planet. The relative brightness of some rings actually reverses depending on whether they're being lit from the near side or from the far side. In some cases, rings that are easily visible under one condition are invisible under others. Now I'll answer some yeah but questions that you and others might think of later. Notice that these portions of the rings are lit by the sun. They reflect light back onto the planet. That light, reflected off the atmosphere, is what's lighting up this section of the rings. It's diffuse and from above and below the rings, unlike the light from the sun which is shining on these portions. That is the likely reason for the drastic change in appearance of some of these rings. Remember, this is a composite and a time exposure. To the naked eye, this would all be pretty much invisible. This isn't a ring. It's on the planet. It looks like the shadow of the rings, doesn't it? But since there is no light source outside of the rings, it can't be that. This is the portion of the planet from which the rings would appear as just a thin line across the sky. So it is getting very little light from them. Above and below that latitude, the brightly lit rings can illuminate the planet. Note the darkness of the polar regions. The rings aren't visible from there, so it's much darker than lower latitudes. This gorgeous photo of Saturn, taken 31 years ago by Voyager 1, shows both features: the shadow of the rings on the day side and the absence of illumination from the rings on the night side. Incidentally, the reason we don't see the rings at all in the shadow is because this is a much faster exposure. The sun is on the same side of the rings as the camera is here, but the sun is behind the rings here, so they would look much darker at the same exposure as this. When I was 13 years old and knew very little about astronomy, I took my new telescope and wonderful H.A. Rey star book up to the roof of my apartment building with the hopes of seeing Saturn. I was scanning around the portion of the sky where Saturn should be, trying to match up the stars with the chart. I figured Saturn would be faint and small and wondered if I would be able to see its rings at all. I had thought this was a bright star and kept skipping past it. Then, when checking out these stars at a higher magnification, I saw this. I can still remember my joy and amazement at finally having seen Saturn and its rings with my own eyes. Little could I have known or imagined that 48 years later, I would see a picture of my home through an outer ring of Saturn that had not yet been discovered. How long ago and how far away that night on the roof of my apartment in Baltimore now seems, but the wonder and sense of connectedness to the universe that I discovered that night has always been with me. So you can keep on infecting YouTube with your Mayan prophecies, time wave zero, sacred geometry, conspiracy theories, Nibiru and Elenin nonsense, disappearing moon, quantum hyperdimensional consciousness shifts, and much other schizophrenic cosmic debris, not to mention your Alex Jonesian politics. Or you could discover the real universe and experience and share the real wonder which it provides. The world, the way it is more than enough to satisfy any hungry mind. One teaspoon of interesting reality outweighs truckloads of fanciful nonsense.